Well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate you taking the time. I gotta say the turnout was pretty good. I was sort of hoping only 4 people might show up, make things a little easier. But just really quickly, who here is a mentor? Just for, okay, awesome, thank you. How about mentees? Okay, excellent. I'm just gonna start off by just saying I'm actually really excited for all of you. I think this is a really exciting, interesting time. You're gonna meet some fascinating, different people. Hopefully you'll take a lot away from that, get some new insights. Overall, I think this is hopefully energizing for you guys. I think it is for me as well. So just really quickly, my name's Chris May. I'm a due diligence analyst for RBC. As it relates to the program, I am the coordinator. I'm also the lead of the membership committee for the CFA Society. Diane Senjum is back there. She's the one that's been sending out all the emails. So if you guys have gotten a dozen or more emails from her, now you can put a face to a name. She's the one that does actually all the real work behind this. So when you get an opportunity, tell her thank you, because otherwise this would just be a crazy idea with no actual implementation. Okay, so I'm going to start out with one other thing of a little bit of minor audience participation, and then I'll let you guys space out for the rest of the time. Just really quickly, in your head, scale of 1 to 5, you don't have to shout it out or anything. Just think about this. How important do you think having a solid network is to achieving your goals? Just on a 1 to 5, kind of think about it. Okay, that's enough thinking. So then I would ask, how do you rate your current network? Again, no need to shout it out, just sort of think about it. My guess is that enough time? Okay. My guess is the second number was probably lower. If it wasn't, good for you. What they've found in sort of doing this type of discussion with people is typically people say, my network, or the importance of having a good network is something like a 4 or a 5. And then they say, well, how good is your network currently? And they say, maybe a 2 or a 3. If you're not in that boat, awesome. Get the hell out. If you are in that boat, then I think you're in the right place. So, all right, just a little bit of background on the program itself. We'll start with a little bit of how we got here. We've done this now 3 times. This will be our 4th. This was sort of just a random idea in 2013. Not a random idea, but just an idea in 2013. We started it with a pilot program in 2014. We only had 10 pairs of partners, and feedback was pretty good. So, we did another year, and we did another year, and here we are. Currently, 55 people have opted to participate. So a significant increase from just a couple years ago. I like to think that means people like doing this, or they're just really nice. So in addition to having more people do this and spread the good word and talk about the mentoring, we also did set up a second track this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But we're calling it sort of the informal track. I said it's the beta version, if you will. This is the first time we're doing it, so if it's terrible, just let me know privately. I don't need the heckling now. And then, where were we, where are we, and where are we going? So as far as the future of this program, it really does depend on feedback from you guys. This program has evolved significantly since we started a few years ago. It will continue to evolve, but really only based on your feedback. So if this goes well, that's great to hear. If there are things that you think could be improved upon, different perspectives you'd like to gain, different ways of doing this, I'd like to hear that too. And then for the people doing this in the next couple years, hopefully they'll have a better experience than you did. Sorry. All right, so just a couple of things in terms of the actual logistics of things. One of the things that we recommend, suggest, demand, if you will, is that the mentees really take control of the relationship. So this means making the contact if you haven't already, setting the meeting dates, setting the agenda, I think is incredibly important. So you're not just going in saying, what are we doing here? How's it going? Hopefully there's an objective to be gained. And if you can be upfront about that in advance, all the easier for both parties. So I mentioned the idea that we have an informal track this time that's a little bit different. The informal group is going to be meeting as a mentee. You'll be meeting with a handful of individuals from all over the business. And when I say all over, I mean like legitimately a number of different jobs that I didn't realize people even did in the Twin Cities. Due to the generosity of the volunteers that we've had, say that they'd be willing to talk with some people. So you'll meet with that person one time, then you'll meet with somebody else with the idea of getting 4 or 5 different interactions with widely different people. And that was based on demand from our participants, based on feedback from people that we'd got, or from feedback we had gotten from people by doing this in the past. So the other track is the one that we've always done, which is more of the formal one-on-one relationship. You'll meet a half dozen times over the course of the next several months, meant to be much more of professional development. Hopefully, in theory, there was some self-selection getting people sort of into the right places, but if you think maybe you're in the wrong program, come talk to me afterward and we can chat. One of the things that I would suggest just in terms of the formal mentors, just to make things a little bit easier, is we did develop a bit of a framework to use where the pair can discuss what are some of the objectives of the mentee, what is it the mentor can really help with, how do those things marry. You don't have to use it. We found it to be pretty successful from the people that have used it, but something to consider, and we have that available, and we'll email it out if you don't have it today. All right, so expectations, for the most part, I'd really prefer not to have this slide up there. Hopefully this is all really, really obvious. Really obvious. I will suggest something on the keep it fun. A number of the people that I talk to on a monthly basis now started out as someone I just met for coffee one time, and we sort of hit it off and kept in touch. I think that is really key, is make it fun, make it not feel so stiff and awkward. No? Okay. Because I do think that will make the program a little bit better. I think you'll enjoy your experience, and hopefully you'll keep in touch with these people over time. All right, so broad goals. What is it we're trying to do here? So there's this old guy up here, and he talked about the benefits of dialogue and about how having a conversation with somebody really helps solidify your thinking. And maybe it's writing, maybe it's talking, but the idea of having some sort of a conversation solidifies your thinking, challenges your thinking, allows you to develop as a person. So I came up with a couple suggestions of things to think about. They may or may not be relevant, but I would suggest that at the end of the day, you're trying to have a meaningful conversation, talking about things that are of interest or of concern, and then listen to what the other person has to say. And this goes for whichever seat you're in, mentee or mentor. I think there's extreme amount of value regardless of which seat you're in. So Aristotle wasn't perfect though. He had this idea of you develop a theory or a thesis, and then you go out there and try to find a bunch of things that line up with that. That's what we'd call confirmation bias. That is not ideal. So today we use the scientific method, which is the idea of you have this theory, and there's no way to prove your theory is exactly right, but you can do tons and tons and tons of tests, hopefully, to try to prove it wrong. Hopefully, they come back negative and don't prove it wrong. If they do, you move on. But the idea is you want to get a lot of opinions. You want to try things out a bunch of different times. You can never know that you're right. You can pretty quickly know if you're wrong, but you can never know if you're right. But by getting a wide variety of opinions, by testing an idea a number of times, it'll give you a lot more confidence to know that maybe some of the things that you're thinking about make sense. The other thing I'd suggest is that a lot of what people believe and a lot of what they think comes from our values, comes from how we grew up, comes from the experiences that we've had. So my guess is if we were to talk about any one topic that was relevant to everybody in this room, we'd end up with 30 different opinions on what that actually means or what to do about it or whatever that may be, because everyone comes from a different perspective. So I just want to talk about a quick example on this. So it's Jon Snow from the 1850s, not this guy. That's a different Jon Snow. Come on. All right. So the idea of, so Jon Snow from the 1850s, right? This is in London. Cholera is like ravaging the city, killing all these people. And you've got this sort of elitist group saying, oh, this is the poor. They're, low quality people. They live in these slums. It's something that they deal with. And then you had this Jon Snow guy, again, not this guy, that he grew up poor. He was in this tiny little village, you know, didn't make any, or his parents didn't make any money. Well, he ended up becoming a doctor, and a pretty good one. He would, you know, delivered one of the Queen's babies at one point, like, you know, a legit guy. And but he had this different worldview. He didn't think the poor were, you know, inferior people. And so so he used more of a scientific method and did research and came to the conclusion that cholera was really a waterborne issue, or something that passes through the water and as people ingest it. Anyway, the point is, he had a very different view, came to a very different conclusion, and instead of just sort of poo-pooing this idea and saying it's the poor and there's nothing we can do about it, he was able to recognize what the actual issues were and come to develop a solution, if you will. Okay, so a little bit more just on goals. So especially on the informal track, more than the formal, because you're going to be meeting a variety of people. I think if you're an informal mentee, you're going to be meeting 4 or 5 people. If you're an informal mentor, like maybe 3 or 4, you are going to have people with very different views, you know, like Jon Snow or the elitist, if you will. I would suggest you embrace the differences. I'm going to ad-lib a little bit. I just threw in this elephant picture right before we started, so bear with me here. Before I came here, I was talking with a guy, and we were having a nice conversation. He brought up the idea of the 5 blind guys and the elephant. Anybody general gist of that? Okay, so here's the deal. So you've got these 5 blind folks, and each one of them's on a different part of the elephant. And so they start feeling around, and you got the guy on the tusk, and you know, and he's like, oh, it's, you know, it's hard, it's rigid, it's sort of pointy at the end, and he's describing it. Then you've got you know, another person, and they're on the trunk, and it's like, well, it's sort of flexible but muscular and kind of, you know, different. And then you got a guy on the ass end, and he's touching the tail and whipping around, and so you get the point. Everyone's got a different perspective. They don't have the whole picture. So everyone comes to this one sort of thought about what it is that they're groping at. What, you know, what are they touching? And they're all wrong. But you put it all together, and you start to come to something of a semblance of an elephant. So you know, this is my roundabout way of saying everyone's got different perspectives. It all means different things. If you put a lot of these things together, maybe you get a little bit closer to, you know, the truth, whatever that may be. All right, so then you have this professor that is at a prestigious business school in Europe, and she suggests that we are narcissistic and lazy in terms of how we come up with our networks. We're narcissistic in that we like people like us, right? You know, if we have a meeting, looking at you, Dave, and you know, we kind of talk the same and have some of the similar backgrounds and be like, yeah, it was a good meeting. And if we talk and you think something totally different, I'd be like, who's this jerk? And, you know, move on, which sort of flies in the face of what I'm trying to get at, which is, you know, again, embrace the fact that people are different. The other thing about the narcissistic and lazy is that most of the people that we network with are people that are close to us. So I would say I'm a prime example of that. As I look out in the crowd, there's a disproportionate number of people that I work with that happen to be sitting here. So I fall into that camp as well. My apologies, but something to think about. All right, so sum up a little bit all this jibber jabber. On the mentee end, the big thing is accept responsibility. Be the person to drive this. What we've heard time and time again is what you put in is what you get out, right? It's sort of cliche, but legitimately, if you have an objective in mind, you're getting to meet all these people, take advantage of it. Again, open-minded about the mentor's background. You might talk to somebody that does something entirely different from you. That's a good thing. Expectations, agenda. You know, one thing on the agenda. If possible, I would suggest that the agenda is distributed ahead of time. And this goes for either track. So if you're informal and you're meeting with somebody once, you probably both have some basic assumptions about what you're going to talk about. Hopefully you're not just going to sit around and BS for an hour, but you know, if you do, that's fine. But hopefully it's maybe more productive than that. And if you do a little research on the front end to find out who it is you're meeting with, and I think this goes for both mentees and mentors, take 5 minutes on LinkedIn or on their company's website. Who is this person you're meeting with? I think it'll make it go a lot smoother. And then the mentee can send an agenda ahead of time suggesting, here are some of the things I'd like to cover. It might diverge, it might not, but I do think that that goes a long way in making the conversation work. On the mentor end, listening. I think that nobody here that's a mentor probably doesn't get that already. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a mentor. Teach, don't tell. I think this one's a little bit harder. A lot of us do coffee meetings and other sorts of things, whether it's formal or informal mentoring with people. It is really easy to get in the habit of trying to solve someone's problem. It's not really what we're here for. If you can solve it and it's really easy, go nuts. But in reality, ask questions, teach as you can, help people think through things. Candid constructive criticism, I think that speaks for itself. And then learn to, this goes back to the idea of, I think we'll all get something from each other, regardless of which seat you're in. All right, a couple things just additionally. I can't emphasize this enough. Focus on gaining insights from one another. We're all different. We've all got different value adds. Please don't ask for a job. You, Dave. I don't want to go any further on that one. Networking can have a bit of a negative connotation. Maybe it feels awkward. Maybe it feels transactional. I would just suggest that when we started this program, we had 10 mentors raise their hand and say, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. This year we had 35 people say that they were willing to mentor in one capacity or another. My guess is that as more and more people find out about this program, we'll have even more. People want to talk about themselves. Talking about Narcissistic, I mentioned that to somebody earlier. We like to talk about ourselves. People like to do this sort of thing. So it doesn't need to be transactional. It doesn't need to be such a negative type of thing. We're here to learn from each other. Enjoy it for what it is. Treat it as if this is a relationship that's going to go on. But if it doesn't, that's fine. Chances are you'll probably see each other in this room at some other event in the future. Be nice to at least be able to say hello. Thank you, email. I do think that that's important, but I'll leave that up to you. So what's in it for me? So we got a bunch of recommendations or a bunch of suggestions and comments. I know this is a little bit hard to read, but it's kind of visually interesting. A bunch of different comments from people in the past about what it is that they were trying to accomplish, especially as mentees. And you can see some of the commonalities in here, like the big one that stands out as advice. That could be career advice. It could be relationship advice, hopefully in the professional setting, not at home. Otherwise, I'd suggest you're talking to the wrong person. It could be, dealing with a boss who's kind of a jackass, right? It could be whatever. It doesn't have to be advice. It could be a skill set that they're looking to develop, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of different things that other people are looking for. If you're not quite sure as a mentee what it is you want to get out of these or how to make the most use of it, feel free to reach out to us. If you're not sure as a mentor how you can help people, a lot of what people are looking for is just general advice. Somebody who maybe is a little more mature, who's gone through some of the same stuff, that can provide an unemotional sounding board. So that's sort of what people want. Here's what they've said to us. I'm not going to read these to you, but basically, people have been generally happy with the program. They've gotten good experiences out of it. There's a whole wide array of what people have gotten out of this, but I'll kind of move past that. And then just as a reminder, the resources, so feel free to touch base with me. Diane's in the back. You can track her down via her email. CFA Institute website's got all sorts of interesting stuff. I constantly come across networking and mentoring articles, and I think there's some really good things there. I highlighted a couple people going through here fairly quickly that write extensively about these types of things, so there are other resources out there. And I think generally that's pretty much about it. I did want to suggest one thing before Diane tells me that I missed it. Hopefully, later this year, maybe in the fall, don't hold me to it, we're going to try to do an industry roundtable type of event. We're still working on the mechanics and logistics of that. We'll see how that develops, but that would be something that we would initially invite mentoring program people to first, and then maybe expand from there. We wanted to make sure that if mentoring and networking, getting to know other people is important to you, which by doing this program we presume it is, that you might be interested in a program like that. So that's something we're working on, hopefully later this year. We'll see where that goes. But otherwise, I think that's all I had. Sorry if that was exceptionally fast. Questions? Get me out of here.
Chris, are you going to send out the sort of suggested agenda?
Yes. Yeah, so the framework document, we'll send that out. We can also send out this deck in case there was anything in here that was mildly amusing. And then I think anything else. What's that? Yeah. And if there's anything that you're missing, just let us know. So, otherwise, if there aren't any questions, then what we're gonna, yeah, go ahead.
What is the expectation, so I'm in the informal period.
Sure.
What's the expectation with the mentors for when they'll be contacted?
So what we have said is that we're giving everyone their lists tonight. So if you're an informal mentee, you got a list tonight of the people that you're supposed to reach out to. We've suggested to try to reach out in the next couple weeks. Not all the meetings have to happen right away, but just at least reach out and make initial contact. So I would say between now and the end of April, now and the beginning of April, just in the next 2 or 3 weeks, that some of that initial contact would have happened. But if, like I said, if you can't meet by then, that's totally fine. So the plan would be at this point is to split up quickly. So anybody that's in the formal program would walk next door to a different room. If you are both pairs here, you can take this time to sort of do an initial get to know you. If both pairs aren't here, talk with some of the other folks that are going to be doing the formal program. Use it as another networking opportunity. Get to know some of the people that are looking at some of the same things that you are, whatever it may be. Informal people, you're stuck with me in here for another few minutes. Cool? And Diane, they're going out in that way?